Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Innisfil Establishing a Well-Connected Transit Community. My name is Claire, and I'm the Deputy Registrar at the OAA. We will begin today's webinar by acknowledging the land on which we're meeting and calling in from. For millennia, the place we call Ontario has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples and nations who have been stewards of the land and are deeply connected to its cultural and natural landscape. We would like to invite you in a moment of reflection to acknowledge our shared responsibility to address past and present injustices and provide a space for Indigenous knowledge and worldviews to shape the architectural landscape of Turtle Island. Before we begin the webinar, I would just like to give you some important information so that we can have an effective and professional webinar experience. Do note that this webinar is being recorded for quality and educational purposes. To maintain a stable internet connection, we have muted all participant microphones and disabled video feeds. However, we do highly encourage questions and engagement through this Q&A window. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. Feel free at any point to submit questions for our speakers. We do have actually a shorter Q&A period just because the presentation itself is longer. And we really encourage you to put questions that deal with the learning objectives or specifically about the architectural aspects of this project. Our speakers aren't politicians, so they can't answer any political or policy related questions. So really focus on, if you could focus your questions on the architectural and learning objectives, that would be wonderful. For those of you who are here today seeking Con Ed hours, your attendance is crucial. So you do need to attend at least 80% of this presentation to be accredited. Those hours for transcript. We will upload them just to allow for a few weeks to process those hours. The speakers today do not provide insurance, legal practice advice, and the OAA does not bear responsibility for errors or omissions in the discussions during the webinar. Having said all that, I would like with great pleasure to introduce our speakers today, Varsha Kumar and Lisa Abundanza.
I hope everyone can hear me. Thank you for joining us today. We'd like to start with a little bit of an introduction and who we are. I'm Lisa Abundanza, and I am a practice lead at Arcadis in our architecture and urbanism group, and I have 30 years of experience in 19 specifically in transit. I'm working on a lot of transit projects in Ontario. My area of work is predominantly in Ontario. I've been working with Varsha now for several years on and she's an architect with 14 years of experience and has joined our practice recently and worked on several projects together, Guelph Central Terminal, My Way shelter prototypes, and the Go Innisfil project, which we are going to discuss today. Next slide. We are from Arcadis, and that is a company that was founded in 1888 from the Netherlands. And we are a company of 36,000 people, over 70 countries, with a large client group. Our studio specifically is located in Toronto, and we lead the transit architecture for Arcadis globally, and our office and our studio is about 150 transit architects. Next slide. And this is just a little bit of a history of Arcadis and how we have grown over the years and the changes in the structure of the company. We became part of Arcadis about 2 years ago. Those of you, many of you may know us previously as being part of IBI Group. So in 2022, that's when we became, or 23, became part of Arcadis, and now we have a larger global reach. Next slide. So today we're here to talk about Innisfil, and we have 4 specific learning outcomes that we hope you will be able to take away today. One is to identify models influencing transit-oriented community issues, understanding collaboration in creating resilient communities, to learn about Innisfil's transformation into a modern garden city, and to explore the role of a central station as a catalyst of growth. Next slide. So our presentation will be divided into 4 parts. The first part, we will talk about transit-oriented communities in a general sense. And then we'll move into the vision for Innisfil that was initiated by Innisfil and the developer, Cortel Group, and how that process and their thinking behind what they wanted this project to be. Then we'll move into how the project started to develop into what it is today. And then we'll conclude with a discussion on sustainability in transit and specifically how it was applied in this project. Next slide. So we're going to begin the discussion on transit-oriented communities with a bit of a history of the relationship of how people live and work and move in cities. And we're going to illustrate this through how the city of Toronto developed. And we select Toronto because it is the place that we know the best, but specifically and more importantly, that it is really a very typical North American city in terms of how it developed. Next slide. So Toronto has its origins as a port town, and it had a very typical British grid applied over it. And it started its growth along commuter rails at the end of, similar to many North American cities at the end of the 1800s. Next slide. At that time, you saw that people lived in very compact neighborhoods. They were very close to amenities, and there was really very little extended daily travel. Next slide. The travel really happened between larger cities, and they were much grander events. And so the transit terminals that represented that time were really these grand monumental structures and interiors to sort of celebrate that infrequent travel. Next slide. By the mid 1900s, you started seeing the development of master plans for cities, and also Toronto becoming this emerging metropolis. And this is where you started to see the beginnings of expressway planning and a general move into the suburbs and those sort of greener spaces. Next slide. Don Mills was one of those suburban expansions, and it was envisioned as this self-supporting planned community. It was very influenced by the Garden City movement, and it was which was one of the first implementations of such a kind of self-sustained community. Next slide. What's interesting is that in planning this community, they looked back to the Garden City movement that was established by Ebenezer Howard that was starting to become popular amongst places in North America. And the Garden City movement was really designed as an urban planning movement that promoted self-sufficient satellite communities around a central city that was separated by green belts. And it was a way to capture that primary benefits of the countryside and the city while avoiding the disadvantages kind of presented by both. So it was really this kind of idealized city, and it was characterized by open spaces and public parks and radial boulevards. And although the pure Garden City, as it's illustrated, was never fully realized, many of the communities that implemented these did keep their core principles and lasting impact on urban planning. Next slide. So for inner cities, while this sort of move to the suburbs was happening, there was still this need to connect people in the city. But those kind of transit initiatives were really meant to get people from A to B. And so the expression of what those meant are really functional and Spartan, because they were really a means of transportation rather than any sort of celebration or integration into a larger transit experience. During the same period, next slide, you could see the continued development of vehicular traffic, which was very, there was still a lot of focus on that and the move to the suburbs. And you'll see as in Toronto was the Gardner Expressway, but sort of a large building of infrastructure to expand out to the suburbs. Next slide. And this led to ultimately a general, this draw to the suburbs, a kind of hollowing out of the urban core and downtowns. And so a lot of you will likely remember this kind of feeling of the inner cities being kind of derelict. Next slide. And this kind of led in more recent times or towards the end of the 20th century, a changing focus and sort of a new urbanism and a shifting away from that post-World War II sprawl. And it was really characterized by refocusing on more walkable neighborhoods and a reurbanization and those sort of more traditional neighborhood connections. And this resulted in this reemergence and a reinvestment in what we like to call the neighborhood station. And this is an example of that in Toronto, which was the modernization of the Victoria Parks subway station, which was one of those sort of mid-1900s or later in the century, mid-century additions to the TTC line. And it really, the focus of this was to sort of make it more of a community focus and reconnect it more into the community. Next slide. And so this is when we start to really see the definition of what a TOD, a transit-oriented development, or a TOC as it's often called, transit-oriented communities. And this concept was coined over 30 years ago by Peter Calthorpe in his book, The Next American Metropolis, in a response to that sprawl. And so his definition of a transit-oriented community is a mixed-use community with an average of 2,000 foot walking distance or a 60-meter walking distance from a transit stop and more core commercial areas. And TODs are mixed with residential and retail office spaces and public uses in a walkable environment, making it convenient for residents and employees to travel by transit, bicycle, foot, and car. So the book defined the kind of specifics and guidelines of planning, both urban and neighborhood models, and the redevelopment of sites and infill. So this was sort of the founding document of TOC. So if we go to the next slide, we will start to see what are the elements of TOC. So T is the transportation element, the modes and the infrastructure and the amenities that allow residents to move safely, provide that connectivity and comfort to travel within the modes. The O, the oriented, is the outside spaces. These are the public spaces and the transitions between the spaces and the buildings, space between. And then the community part is the buildings, the buildup of the areas and the development where different human activity can occur to support a mix of uses around housing, employment, hospitality, and education. So those are the sort of elements that build up into a TOC. Next slide. In the context of Ontario, the TOC program was established through the provincial government through policy in 2020, and this is an illustration of what at the time, how they wanted to formalize or implement the TOC. And the program was defines the transit arteries where TOC communities will be implemented, tied to the province's expansion mandate. And they would be along 4 priority subway lines, GO Transit expansion, and LRT projects underway and planned, and a majority of which our practice has a large part in delivering right now. Next slide. So what are the objectives of TOC? Increase transit ridership and reduce traffic congestion, increase housing supply and jobs, stimulate the economy through major projects, and bring retail community amenities within a short distance of public transit and public transit stations. Next slide. This is an illustration again through the TOC program of how those elements could start being come together in a diagrammatic way to illustrate where development and where stations and where retail can start being put together in more dense ways, and to introduce mixed use and to start creating the how a city could become more walkable, and creating those avenues and street fronts of more dense integration. Next slide. In terms of types of TOC, generally they break down into 4 types. There's the embedded entrance, which is essentially an entrance that's built within the ground floor of a transit station. There's overbuild, which is literally overbuilding over an underground transit station. And then there is transit adjacent, which is lands that are developed adjacent to a transit station. And then there's the master planned community, which is where the GO Innisfil station falls in terms of typology. Next slide. This is an example of a TOC that is an embedded entrance. It's from the Ottawa LRT. It's the Rideau station, where the developer's main entrance became part of the transit station. Next slide. These are a few examples of TOC that are overbuilds. We've used 2 examples on projects we're participating in currently. The 2 on the left are Eglinton Crosstown, and the one on the right is Cosburn Station on the Ontario line. And with the at the time of Eglinton Crosstown, which was around 2013-14, there was less emphasis on TOC in the way that it is currently. And so the 2 examples here illustrate one at Leaside Station, where there was a developer on board to provide an overbuild. But what the line did do was sort of preserve for sites where future development could happen. So you see this middle image here at Laird Station, where an entrance is sort of space-proofed with adjacent interim landscaping to preserve for what would be a future development of that surrounding mall area. And then with Cosburn Station, this is on the Ontario line, Pape North, you can see that already from the reference concept design stage that there is envisioned a lot more density over the station, and that TOC programming has already been happening at a much more intense level. So that's just sort of over the past 12, 15 years, you could just sort of see the emphasis on more densified transit shifting. Next slide. This one is on the Scarborough subway extension. It's Lawrence East, and this is part of the reference concept design as well. And you'll notice that this one is more transit adjacent, where the areas surrounding the station itself are going to be built up as part of a transit-oriented self-sustaining community. Next slide. And the final example is the master plan community. This is an example of a project we have, a master plan in Los Angeles Civic Center, where a large area of the downtown is going to be replanned around a transit station, high density, to sort of reinvigorate the area around the Civic Center to providing this master planned community. Next slide. And the next, so this brings us into Innisfil and how their vision for a master planned community for their city or their town began. Next slide. Innisfil is located on the western shore of Lake Simcoe. It's just south of Barrie, and it's only 80 kilometers north of Toronto. Historically, it's been a rural area, but geographically, it's sandwiched between two high growth areas of Barrie and York region. It is on the Barrie GO line, which runs through the city, as you'll see here illustrated by this red line. So there are existing commuter rail tracks there. And this proximity to transit was the catalyst for the town's planning for their future growth. Next slide. The orbit was the vision of the town of Innisfil and how they wanted their community to grow. It's a joint project between the town of Innisfil and the Quartel Group, and this maps out the growth of the community around a central station, around a central civic hub, and it's planned to be built out over decades. And it's envisioned as a place of high density living that preserves the existing natural features and characters of the town, rather than reinforcing that traditional urban sprawl. Next slide. So within the master plan of the orbit, there's two initial concentric rings of development that are proposed. And that's identified by that yellow circle, which is called the protected major transit station area. And this is where the bulk of the dense TOC will happen. So the TOC 1 circle is that pink circle, where you'll see the star, which is where the transit plaza will be. And that's the first 225 meter concentric development where the highest density and the highest towers will happen. The next circle is in the blue circle, which is a ring that extends out to 425 meter. And that contains a wider range of development. And that's where the scale and the density starts to reduce down. Next slide. The goals of the town are very much aligned with those initial visions for Garden City and the TOC. This is directly from their vision statement on their website. So they want a sustainable community. They'd like a neighborhood that has their 15-minute walkable neighborhoods. And they want to provide for higher quality density at a human scale. And they would like an insightful community, meaning that they would like the day-to-day life of their cities to be focusing more on neighborhoods and good neighborhood design. And they really wanted to focus on placemaking and achieving a great sense of place. Next slide. So you'll see within the master planning here of the two circles, they're illustrated here, the interior one being the 225, which is where you'll see the transit plaza. Currently being developed is that transit plaza at the upper left quadrant of the interior ring, and the development to the right of that, and what they're calling the gateway. What's interesting also about this site is the change in topography and how those developments, which Varsha will illustrate later, navigated that topography to kind of really integrate that the development of the high rises to the right, going down into that central plaza and over the GO tracks in the middle. So within the rings, there are buildings are separated by alternating roads and connected green spaces, and they're served by a hierarchy of street designs, ranging from arterial roads to local streets and pedestrianized or shared use access roads or WRNORFs. So there was a lot of focus on where those kind of blurred lines of connection between public and private, and also separation of cars and pedestrians. So once complete, the 4 quadrants of our orbit will function as a fully self-sustained, connected community. And you can start seeing from the elements that are being placed in each of the quadrants that how each quadrant will develop on its own, but also be connected together. So with that history on how we got to where we're at with the project and TOC, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Varsha so she can take you through the development of the project.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. So Lisa essentially, set out the design brief that was given to us by the Town of Innisfil and the client. So we're now going to unpack that a little bit and talk you through our design process. The Town of Innisfil is transforming into a modern garden city with a train station as its civic heart. Currently characterized by small hamlets and lush agriculture pastures, Innisfil is reimagining the concept of a garden city. The GO station will serve as the strong central civic hub, fostering growth along a system of concentric trajectories. So these will be activated by the seamless flow of commuters, supported by an established framework of pedestrian, cycling, and vehicular routes. So the first part of our design process involved understanding 3 key aspects. 1, the context in which the Town of Innisfil is situated. 2, the culture of the town and its driving forces. 3, the regulatory framework governing the design of the GO station. Okay, now we're going to go into this in some further detail, but before I move on, I just want to say that this slide and the previous slide, you'll start to see now going forward a few full screen views, and these are all concept renderings of the Innisfil GO station. So first we look at trying to understand the context in which the Town of Innisfil is. You've already seen the image on the left here, which is a location map of the Town of Innisfil. The Innisfil GO station will be a GO Transit railway and bus facility situated along the Barrie Line on lands west of the existing rail corridor and north of 6th Line near Webster Road. The images on the right here show the concentric circle design of the Innisfil orbit, which serves as a fundamental organizing principle, fostering seamless integration between various elements of the community. Green spaces are strategically placed within these circles, ensuring that they are accessible from multiple directions, promoting a sense of openness and accessibility. This design encourages residents and visitors to move fluidly between urban and natural environments. The network of trails that you see in sort of the second image there on the right, both existing and proposed, weave through the circular pattern and through the community, linking parks, recreational areas, and neighborhoods. This promotes active transportation options such as walking and cycling, making it easier for people to navigate the area without relying solely on vehicles. Furthermore, the concentric layout enhances the connectivity of settlements by providing multiple pathways that converge toward the transit center. This ensures that all areas of the community are well connected, fostering a sense of unity and cohesion. The circular design also allows for maximizing the potential for mixed-use developments and vibrant community interactions. Next, we look at understanding the culture. The Town of Innisfil is a community-oriented municipality with a rich rural heritage and a strong connection to nature. Historically defined by its small town charm, agricultural traditions, and proximity to Lake Simcoe, the town embraces outdoor activities like fishing, hiking, and cycling, which are integral to its lifestyle. Local events, farmers markets, and festivals foster a neighborly spirit and highlight the town's appreciation for community and the arts. As Innisfil grows, its cultural diversity expands, enriching the town with new traditions and perspectives. Understanding regulation. So now the regulatory framework governing the development of the Innisfil GO station is shaped by several key components, and each of these components play an essential role in ensuring the project aligns with broader urban planning and transit objectives. The first is the Minister's zoning order. So the MZO is a tool used by the Ontario government to expedite development by overriding local zoning bylaws. In the context of the Innisfil GO Station, the MZO allows for accelerated planning and implementation, ensuring that the project can proceed swiftly to meet the town's growth and infrastructure needs. Next are the Metrolinx design standards, and that's sort of the DSO4 that you see here. So as a regional transportation authority, Metrolinx sets specific design standards for all its projects, including the Innisfil GO Station. These standards ensure consistency in quality, safety, accessibility, and functionality across the transit network. They encompass guidelines on station layout, accessibility features, signage, and integration with other modes of transportation, all in order to provide a seamless commuter experience. And lastly, the Metrolinx Asset Protection Package, or MAP, is a Metrolinx document that governs Metrolinx-led transit-oriented community projects. In this context, the station is being constructed and delivered by the developer for Metrolinx, who will maintain and operate the facility. So together, all of these regulatory elements ensure that the Innisfil GO Station is developed in a manner that supports its goals, meets community needs, and adheres to the high levels of standard and functionality. Okay, now we are going to look at some of the project aspirations as they relate to growth, placemaking, and community. The Innisfil GO Station project aims to drive sustainable urban growth, establishing the town as a vital transit-oriented hub, while balancing economic expansion with environmental considerations. It focuses on placemaking by blending nature with urban design to create engaging public spaces, and it emphasizes community by enhancing connectivity and inclusivity through pedestrian-friendly pathways and accessible transit options. The growth aspirations of the Innisfil GO Mobility Hub is to transform the area into a dynamic, transit-oriented urban center that serves as a catalyst for sustainable economic and population expansion. By strategically integrating the transit station into the broader community development plan, the hub aims to attract new businesses, residents, and visitors, thereby boosting local economic activity and job creation. So this vision emphasizes smart growth principles, ensuring that development is balanced with environmental stewardship, efficient land use, and enhanced connectivity. Ultimately, the Mobility Hub aspires to position Innisfil as a key regional node, fostering a modern, interconnected, and vibrant urban environment. Lastly, the placemaking aspiration is to create a vibrant, engaging, and inclusive civic space that transcends its function as a transit hub. The design aims to seamlessly integrate nature with urban elements, fostering a garden city atmosphere that enhances the aesthetic and functional appeal of the area. This involves developing unique public spaces, green areas, and recreational trails that encourage social interaction, community engagement, and a sense of belonging. The hub seeks to be a place where people can connect, relax, and thrive, offering accessible, pedestrian-friendly environments that cater to diverse needs and activities. So the community aspirations of the Innisfil GO Mobility Hub are thoughtfully structured around the macro, meso, and micro scales, with an emphasis on walkability and connectivity through the concentric circles that you see on the screen here, where the largest one shows you the extent of sort of the 15-minute walking distance. The middle one is for the 10-minute walk, and the smallest one at the center is within the 5-minute walking distance. At the macro scale, which is the 15-minute walking distance, the orbit incorporates strategic planning of land uses, densities, building heights, and road layouts, ensuring that essential services and amenities are all within the 15 minutes. This design promotes a cohesive urban environment where residents can access daily needs and recreational opportunities without relying on vehicles, enhancing sustainability and quality of life. At the meso scale, the focus shifts to the spaces people inhabit, particularly the critical areas between buildings and their functions. The 10-minute walking distance is crucial here, as it facilitates how residents and visitors navigate the community, interact with various movement systems, and experience quality of life. This scale emphasizes creating accessible and inviting pathways that link homes, workplaces, and communal spaces, fostering social interaction and community engagement. Finally, at the micro scale, the emphasis is on how individuals engage with buildings and landscapes through thoughtful planning, form, and materiality. Within the 5-minute walking distance, the hub aspires to create intimate, engaging, and harmonious spaces. And these areas are obviously designed for immediate access to local amenities and green spaces, ensuring that every aspect of daily needs are within reach. Okay, so far we reviewed the understanding of the project brief, the aspirations of the town of Innisfil, and the goals that they're hoping to achieve through this development. The design of the Innisfil GO station is approached through a multifaceted lens, encompassing site layout, built form, connectivity, and identity. In terms of site layout, the focus is on optimizing the station's placement to harmoniously fit it within the surrounding environment. This involves strategic planning of station buildings, parking facilities, and green spaces to ensure a seamless user experience that balances functionality with aesthetic appeal. The built form of the station emphasizes architectural design and spatial qualities, considering building heights, massing, and orientation. This aspect of the design prioritizes sustainability, accessibility, and durability, ensuring that the station complements its surroundings while meeting operational needs. Connectivity and identity are also central to the station's design, and it focuses on integrating the station with the broader community and regional transportation networks. So the first thing we're going to look at is the site development and how we came to position the station. The site is currently surrounded by agricultural land to the west and north. To the northeast of the rail corridor, which is essentially this quadrant here, urban development has begun, including the Sleeping Line subdivision, which primarily features single-family homes. So the siting of the Innisfil GO station at the intersection of 6th Line and the GO track lines is strategically chosen to maximize accessibility and connectivity. This location serves as a pivotal junction, linking the station to both the local road network and the regional rail system. Positioned at this intersection, the station acts as a gateway to the community, offering convenient access for commuters traveling to and from Innisfil. So the placement at 6th Line, and so this is 6th Line, allows for efficient integration with existing and future road infrastructure, facilitating smooth vehicular, pedestrian, and cycling access to the station. This ensures that the station is easily accessible from surrounding neighborhoods and key destinations. So the GO station is centered north and west of the intersection of the elevated 6th Line road and the GO Berry line. The new station facility is located at grade, or that is track level, on the west side of the rail corridor. The platforms begin just north of the elevated 6th Line, and the station buildings are to be found at approximately the midpoint of the platforms. The siting at this intersection provides opportunities to develop adjacent areas into vibrant mixed-use spaces that complement the station. This can include retail, residential, and recreational facilities that enhance the station's role as a central hub for community activity. Overall, the strategic siting at 6th Line and the GO train tracks is designed again to support Innisfil's growth, connectivity, and transformation into a modern urban environment. Now we look at implementation of the build form. So the first image here on the left shows how the station building was initially organized as a linear bar aligned with the rail tracks. We then proceeded to develop it a little bit further because we also need to think about access across the tracks. And so what we ended up doing was the pedestrian overpass ended up interrupting the linear elements. And so this is how we expressed an east-west pedestrian connection above the tracks. And what this essentially did was detach the service and station modules onto either side of that overpass and thereby creating opportunity for passengers to access the platform directly in the gaps between these buildings. The service module was then dispersed across the site to be near the PUDO entrance. And I'm going to be using a lot of acronyms. I apologize in advance if you don't know what some of them mean, but the PUDO would be the pickup drop-off, which is essentially this area here that you see on this diagram. So the service module was dispersed across the site to be closer to the PUDO entrance, thereby allowing for plazas and community gathering spaces to be positioned closer to the station build form. And then also by rotating the passenger module, this little station building here allowed for the waiting room and the PUDO to have a strong visual connection, as well as creating an orthogonal and simple form that shapes the station plaza and guides pedestrian movement around the facility. The retail component in the station building was actually placed right here at this very edge, so that it would have a strong connection to the future civic plaza that would be part of the high-rise development, and that's the blue circle here. And this is how we're trying to sort of now link all of these spaces together, and this is how the neighborhood would start to have active service and retail frontages. We now look at a little bit now into the site circulation and the functional program. Multi-purpose trails exist currently on both sides of the rail corridor as pedestrian spines connecting the north and south ends of the site to the station and access building plazas. The elevators, stairs, and pedestrian overpass connect the east and west platforms and communities. Buses load and unload along sawtooth platforms, notched into an intermodal plaza located adjacent to the PUDO, which is parallel to the rail lines. Pedestrians are encouraged to walk along pathways throughout the site to the station building and plaza forecourt. The access modules on the west and east have stairs and elevators to the elevated pedestrian overpass, and these are also in alignment with Metrolinx's design standards. Care has been taken in the design of all routes of circulation to promote passive security, the idea of seeing and being seen, as well as to utilize as much natural light as possible. These two images here identify the circulation that will happen through the site, not just at a commuter level, but at a community level, thereby accentuating the important role this station will play in becoming more than just a transit station for the town of Innisfil. The west and east MUP, the multi-use path, follows the rail corridor and reaches the northern limit of the west platform. At this point, a 3-meter wide path enters the Metrolinx property. That's essentially this sort of black line that you're seeing, where it enters the Metrolinx property at the south and continues along the rail corridor at the track level. The trail users on both sides will be able, specifically on the east side, and that's up here, actually, sorry, these diagrams are a little rotated, but the trail users here will have access to a ramp where they will be able to ascend to the East Community Plaza and the development on that end, again, via ramps and steps. So it is at this juncture that, I do want to stress that the GO Station plazas on both the east and west sides, they are being promoted as a pedestrian-friendly zone. This means that while in theory, the MUP is going through the site on both sides, cyclists and skateboarders will be instructed to dismount and walk through the plaza, ensuring that it is a safe and accessible environment for all. Okay, so now we're going into the concept and the development of the identity of the station. And this is an image from one of our initial visits to the GO Station sites, where we stood, on the elevated 6th line, which is at a much higher level than the actual ground plane of the site. And we looked out across the landscape, and the view was striking. And what really stood out to us were just these gentle clouds, right? These clouds that were hovering over the farm fields, almost veil-like, creating a scene that felt almost poetic and very calming. So this moment captured the essence of the site, and this is what inspired the conceptual approach to the station's design. So the vision of the floating clouds, right, inspired the station's layered design, where each element reflects the relationship between the natural and the built environments. The ground plane, like the fields, serves as the foundation, a stable structured surface that facilitates movement and interaction. Its design echoes the textures and patterns of the agricultural land, seamlessly integrating pathways, platforms, and landscaping into a cohesive connection with the surrounding environment. Above this, the veil or canopy takes on the role of the clouds, appearing to float lightly over the ground plane. Designed with a dynamic organic form, the canopy casts soft shadows and provides shelter while maintaining a sense of openness and lightness. Its carefully placed openings will allow sunlight to filter through, illuminating the landscape below and reinforcing the connection between the earth and the sky. Rising above the canopy, the overpass is envisioned as a beacon, embodying the essence of a cloud suspended in the air. It hovers above the station, providing critical connectivity while also serving as a striking visual landmark. So before we go deeper into this, I just want to establish, why is architectural identity important in this context? The architectural identity of the Innisfil Go Mobility Hub is essential because it establishes the station as the civic core and defines the character of the overall master plan. Architectural identity gives the station a sense of place, ensuring that it stands out as a unique and recognizable feature of Innisfil, while integrating harmoniously with the surrounding landscape. This identity can celebrate the town's history, values, and aspirations, embodying its transition from a rural municipality into a vibrant, future-forward urban center. So we now just want to look at how the design of the canopy came about. And so the introduction of the canopy was a strategic architectural element, which was designed to enhance both functionality and aesthetic appeal. The canopy serves multiple purposes, extending beyond its primary role of providing shelter to passengers and visitors. Firstly, the canopy provides a cohesive architectural presence at the station, ensuring it stands out as a significant civic landmark without necessitating a large increase in the built-up area. By visually connecting disparate elements, such as the overpass and the station buildings, the canopy creates a unified and harmonious look, facilitating a seamless flow of movement and activities throughout the site. The design of the canopy is then thoughtfully manipulated by responding to the site's unique characteristics and the station's functional needs. So this is why, we started to push and pull at the canopies, to try to sort of direct people toward things or pull them away toward things, so that the shape of the canopy, even though very organic, is actually very responsive to the site functions and the way people are moving through the site. And so by achieving this organic expression, the canopy now starts to reflect the dynamic and fluid nature of the orbit's overall design. Its form, like I said, is not only functional, but it's also artistic. And what we're trying to do here is integrate the landscape and also enhance the station's identity. So the first image that you see up here, we want to just go into two more things that we did as far as the canopy goes, where we looked at areas and we identified areas that needed to be sheltered. So these were key areas such as entrances to the station buildings and the access modules. So we made sure that we were extending coverage over these critical points so that we can ensure that passengers and visitors are shielded from the elements as they're transitioning between the different parts of the station. In addition to offering shelter, the canopy incorporates openings that allow for the integration of landscape features, such as planters and organic forms. These openings enable natural light and airflow while also fostering a harmonious connection between the built environment and the surrounding greenery. The perimeter of the canopy at the Innisfil station is accentuated through the use of vertical metal fins, which are a standout architectural feature that enhances the station's identity and presence. So this rendered view here is very successful in demonstrating sort of the intent behind the design, right? So the fins here, which, though introduced as a vertical dimension to a very horizontal canopy, established a very bold and visually striking element that frames the extent of the station space, the plazas on the east and west sides. And the rhythmic arrangement of the fins added texture and depth, visually defining the boundaries of the canopy while maintaining openness and flow. Beyond their structural role, the vertical metal fins contribute obviously to the aesthetic experience by interacting with light and shadow throughout the day. And this interplay creates a very dynamic visual effect that, evolves with time. Obviously, during the nighttime, the effect of the fins is very different than during the day. So we're hoping that, together the fins symbolize modernity and innovation. And, they're really helping to sort of transform this canopy into a statement piece, which really strengthens the architectural identity of the Innisfil Go Mobility Hub. We cannot talk about the Innisfil Go Station without talking about the landscape. The landscape design is around creating a very visually engaging and functional environment that enhances the user experience while reflecting the dynamic character of the orbit environment. Through the thoughtful integration of planters, mounds, and organic shaped blobs, the design introduces layers of interest and intuitive wayfinding, transforming the station's surroundings into a cohesive and inviting space. The use of raised planters serve a dual purpose of adding greenery to soften the urban environment and creating spatial boundaries that guide movement. These elements define pathways while introducing natural textures, colors, and seasonal variations, making the space feel vibrant and alive. Sculptured mounds of native and drought-tolerant trees underplanted with equally resilient and low-maintenance grasses and pollinator species will serve as useful buffers between vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Large native shade trees define pathways, parking areas, and public walkways, while taller grass swales add screening and are strategically placed throughout the site to create moments of visual interest and engagement. So these features break the monotony of flat surfaces, encouraging exploration and interaction. So a crucial aspect of the landscape design is intuitive wayfinding, which ensures seamless navigation through the site without excessive signage. The strategic placement of pathways and sculptural elements naturally guides visitors, highlighting key areas like entrances and transit connections. Raised planters and mounds serve as subtle markers, while organic shapes act as visual anchors, helping people orient themselves within the space. Ultimately, the landscape design plays a significant role in defining the GO Station, again, as a very recognizable landmark within the broader master plan. What we're trying to do here is create a cohesive visual language that ties the station to the Garden City concept, a design that reinforces the connection to nature and also reflect Innisfil's forward-thinking aspirations. So now we'll go a little bit into the functionality, right? So we spoke about the vision, we spoke about the concept, but at the end of the day, this is a train station and it needs to be functional and it needs to meet certain operational needs. So the organization of the station components is carefully designed to align with the Metrolinx design standards, while also ensuring intuitive wayfinding and clear sightlines throughout the site. So the station building, which is this building here labeled as number 5, acts as the central hub located strategically to serve as the focal point for services, ticketing, and passenger amenities. The bus shelters, number 3 and Pudo, which is the pickup and drop-off shelters, are placed near designated vehicle zones, ensuring smooth transit flow and adherence to operational standards. The layout of the station components emphasizes intuitive wayfinding, allowing passengers to navigate the site effortlessly. The pedestrian overpass, which is number 8 here, is a key feature which connects the east and west access modules, number 6 and number 7. These are sort of our triple height volumes that help to connect to the overpass that goes over the rail tracks. And we're also making sure that we're maintaining sight lines between key components, such as the station building, the bus shelters, and the train platforms. The remote service building, that's this guy here, number 1, and the garbage enclosure are positioned away from the high traffic areas to minimize visual clutter and maintain clear paths for pedestrian movement. The station is the first piece of the orbit that is going in. The density will go up around it later. So at this point right now, we have to think of day 1, where we need to account for commuters who will be driving to the station. There's no one living right next to the station right now. It's an agricultural field, which is why you see a surface parking lot here at number 10. It's currently been designed away from the GO station lands, so it's out. It's not inside the GO station lands, and so this is planned as a temporary parking lot that in the future, once the development and the density around the station grow and there's lesser reliance on cars, the site of this parking lot will be repurposed for further development. On this slide now, we will look a little bit at the train station, at the train platforms. So the first image here, which is the platform and the platform canopies. So we will have new platform canopies that will be providing a coverage of 85% on the total platform length, which is 315 meters. And also, there is currently one existing track running north-south on the Barrie line. At the time the station will be constructed, a second line will be added locally just at the location of the station to allow and facilitate the station to be able to serve both sides of the community. There will also be platform curbs that are positioned 127 mm from the top of rail to conform to Metrolink standards, and the platform surface will drain away from the tracks, as is again a Metrolink's requirement. Lighting and communications equipment will be mounted in the canopy soffit of the platform, and there will also be CCTV cameras, and all of the additional electronic equipment will be coordinated with the various disciplines and subscribers to make sure that there is sufficient space allocated and provided for all of this equipment. There will also be a glycol snow melt provided on the platform as required by the map. This second image here shows you the location of the mini platforms. So what are mini platforms? Mini platforms at GO stations are raised sections of the train platform designed to provide accessible boarding for passengers with mobility challenges. They are positioned to align with the accessible train cars, and these platforms are also designed to minimize the gap between the platform and the train, allowing for safer and easier boarding for individuals using wheelchairs, scooters, or other mobility aids. They will also be equipped with tactile warning strips, guards, handrails, and clear signage. Many platforms ensure safety and intuitive use for all passengers, while also supporting universal design principles. Lastly, the third image on the slide here shows the platform shelters. So there's 14 platform shelters with incorporated mini hubs, and platform access modules will be provided on the new side platforms. The shelters will be integrated within the platform and platform canopy in the bay created between two adjacent piers. As typical to the platform, shelters will have a concrete floor, and they will also have lighting equipment and ceiling mounted infrared heaters for customer convenience. We'll now speak a little bit about the accessibility considerations on the project. Walking distances from various station facilities to the platform are a critical consideration in the design of the Innisfil GO Mobility Hub, as they directly impact passenger convenience, efficiency, and overall user experience. Short, direct walking routes between key facilities such as the station building, bus shelters, pickup and drop-off shelters, and the train platforms are prioritized to ensure seamless movement for all users. There's an effort to minimize walking distances, which would reduce travel times within the station, making the commute more efficient, especially for passengers who have tight schedules. The second image that you see down here are the platform access modules, which are paired with the platform shelters that I previously mentioned. And these, they have a lot of, they incorporate a range of accessibility and tactile wayfinding measures to ensure safe and inclusive navigation for all users. They also include stairs, guards, and handrails and ramps to ensure that it's all accessible. We'll talk a little bit about wayfinding now and the use of materiality and lighting in defining the station's aesthetic and functional identity. The selection of materials is guided by durability, sustainability, and visual appeal, with surfaces that are both tactile and visually engaging. This way, we're making sure that these materials provide subtle cues that support intuitive wayfinding. Lighting is also strategically used to transform the station, reinforcing it as a community landmark, as well as using it to be an effective tool for wayfinding. Just because we have this great rendered view up here on the right, I do want to talk about what we call the fifth elevation. So given that the station will be encircled by high-rise developments, the views from these towers onto the station's roof were a significant consideration in our design process. The roof view was meticulously planned to ensure visual appeal and harmony with the surrounding skyline. We took care to minimize the placement of rooftop units, opting for green roofs wherever possible, and finding optimal, alternative locations for any mechanical units as well. Lastly, we're going to speak a little bit about signage. Signage that conforms to Metrolinx's design standards is very critical in ensuring clarity, consistency, and ease of navigation throughout the site. These standards dictate the use of clear, universally recognizable icons, consistent typography, and strategic placement to guide passengers efficiently from one point to another. Signage is used all across the site to highlight key locations such as entrances, exits, platforms, ticketing areas, and amenities. Additionally, the overpass itself serves as this visual anchor, and we have sort of this station identifying marker, this full height, Innisfil logo that is sort of stretched across the overpass that goes over the railway tracks. And what we're hoping is that this becomes sort of a very, identifying marker for the town of Innisfil and the train station, and acts as a guiding element to orient passengers to navigate toward the station, and away from the station. Okay, so I'll now pass it on to Lisa to sort of introduce us what we did on sustainability.
Hello. Innisfil Station and the development of the entire GO project really illustrates a commitment to the leadership in the environment and consideration for the well-being of people and community at all levels of the stakeholders involved in the project. And it really was a founding principle for all from the beginning. They're being implemented currently on the project through a collaboration with the design build team, the township, Metrolinx, and under the leadership of Intuitive, who are our sustainability consultant on the project. Next slide. So the primary objectives for sustainability for transit projects are not dissimilar to those in other projects. Really, it's to promote a healthy planet and to create healthy environments for its inhabitants. Often transit is considered sustainable because we move a lot of people and we take cars off the road. But really, in and of itself, transit isn't sustainability. However, assessing what is sustainable is based on existing metrics and reporting processes. And those are really not typically transit specific, as they're largely developed for occupied and conditioned spaces, which are not what transit stations are. So applying metrics to the projects for transit projects and large infrastructure projects is really not entirely straightforward. So before we can create a comprehensive project-specific approach for the selection of the reporting matrices, kind of like creating a roadmap for the projects, we really need to understand all the metrics that are available out there for us. So we're going to go, next slide. We're going to go through some of the metrics that we have and the rating system. So all of you will be familiar with LEED. It's created by the Green Building Council, historically focused on buildings that are occupied and interiors, not transit specific. However, interestingly, there is a pilot project out there for LEED. For a pilot project, sorry, for transit projects. So we'll be following that closely. Next slide. Not specific to Innisfil itself, but the Toronto Green Standards is a municipal standard. So we'll all know that a lot of municipalities have their own standards. Historically, again, mostly for occupied buildings. What we've noticed with municipal standards is they are sometimes more negotiable. For example, we have often had success in being able to take green roof requirements, which are a percentage of the area, and you'll know from transit buildings that entrances are rather small on underground stations, and doing things like collecting all of the requirements and putting a green roof on a larger, more industrial part of a building, like a maintenance facility, or focusing all of the site initiatives to another area where they are more impactful and more aligned with the intent of really what sustainability is, because we really want impact rather than just a checklist of metrics. Next slide. We will all know about the recent introduction of SB 10 to the building code. It is part 3. Again, it applies to all conditioned spaces, transit stations for the large majority of it, with the exception of some very small areas, which Varsha will get into later, that are actually conditioned, are considered transient spaces and unoccupied. So the introduction of this standard does pose some unique challenges for stations. Some of them include things like the high traffic volumes and a lot of opening doors. So there's a lot of energy, loss of energy efficiency. We don't often include vestibules, again, because they're unconditioned spaces, large open spaces, energy intensive. We produce a lot of passive process loads, so we produce a lot of energy to run the systems, and also envelopes, because these buildings are unconditioned. Transit stations are often unconditioned, and in fact, we also have just generally a lot of open spaces just for things like dealing with piston effect or just passive ventilation of stations. So there have been some interesting challenges with how to apply and how to deal with SB 10. Next slide. Metrolinx has quite recently, February 2021, implemented a sustainability guide. This is transit agency specific. Other transit agencies also have their own standards. Through this guide, we are required to submit for LEED certification. What's interesting is also that they have implemented some of their own standards that they feel is important for the maintaining of their assets and their sustainability. And one of the interesting ones is the requirement to have life cycle analysis as a performance and compliance metrics as part of this standard. The final one, which we want to introduce, is Envision. Envision was created by the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure. This standard has been used a lot in the US. It was introduced in this project as a test case for implementing this. So it's, again, one of the standards we analyzed in terms of creating a roadmap, which Varsha will sort of explain which parts of which standards were applied. And this is specifically focused on infrastructure projects for unoccupied and unconditioned spaces. So it's a rating system, it's for larger developments, and includes some interesting qualitative credits such as human well-being, community development, and collaboration. What's interesting to note as we started looking at all these standards is, again, the conflicts or the inconsistencies in how to apply it, and how this continues to be kind of an evolving process in terms of how to implement these metrics in terms of certification and which ones are most applicable to projects. And with that, I will pass it back to Varsha, where she'll take you through how we navigated sustainability in the project. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Lisa. So basically, just because this is a transit-oriented community, and Envision as a rating system did sort of look at things at a higher level and did look at it from a community point of view, we started to focus on Envision and what getting an Envision certification would entail. So the first thing is going right back to the beginning, right? And we needed to embed sustainability initiatives. And so how do we go about doing this? And there are some key considerations to be addressed, specifically for a project like OAA Innisfil in its very this context that we have here. So the first would be network connectivity, where we would need to integrate projects with existing and future infrastructure to enhance transportation efficiency and reduce environmental impacts. Multimodal streets, design streets to accommodate various transportation modes, promoting reduced car reliance and healthier low-emission lifestyles. Mobility focus, prioritize sustainable and efficient mobility solutions like electrical vehicle infrastructure. Public spaces and walkable streets, create inviting public spaces with pedestrian-friendly streetscapes to encourage community interaction. Human scale architecture, which is designing buildings with energy efficient, contextually appropriate materials that enhance human comfort and foster a sense of place. Accessibility, implement universal design principles to ensure inclusive and barrier-free environments that accommodate all abilities. And lastly, community engagement, making sure we involve local communities in the design process to align projects with their needs and build a sense of ownership and support. So we went about setting up some sustainability guidelines, or following some sustainability guidelines that were set out by Envision. First would be to provide clarity. Clearly define and communicate sustainability goals to ensure alignment and understanding amongst all stakeholders. Set a foundational compass. Establish core principles to guide long-term sustainability efforts and decision-making throughout the project. Address interconnected components. Design holistically by integrating site, building, and community elements to achieve resilient and sustainable outcomes. Include stakeholder engagement, which is actively involve stakeholders to ensure sustainability initiatives reflect community needs and foster collaboration. Drive decision-making, use sustainability goals to inform critical decisions, ensuring environmentally responsible and aligned choices. Add rigor to analysis and engagement. Apply data-driven evaluations and best practices to assess impacts and guide sustainability strategies effectively. And lastly, maintain consistency to ensure sustainability practices are upheld across all planning phases to achieve project goals and integrity. So Envision has 5 core categories, which provide a comprehensive framework for evaluating the sustainability and resiliency of infrastructure projects. So the first one is quality of life, which focuses on enhancing community well-being by improving public health, safety, and equity through sustainable infrastructure. 2 is leadership, emphasizes strong governance, stakeholder engagement, and ethical practices to prioritize and implement sustainability goals effectively. 3 would be resource allocation, which encourages efficient use of resources by promoting conservation, waste reduction, and responsible material sourcing. Number 4 would be natural world, which aims to protect and restore ecosystems and biodiversity while promoting sustainable land and water management practices. Lastly, climate and resilience, which prioritizes designing infrastructure to adapt to climate change, withstand disruptions, and reduce emissions for improved resilience. So Envision currently for Go Innisfil is very much underway. And we have prepared an Envision checklist, which demonstrates a project planning, design, and construction approach that is anticipated to meet or exceed the requirements of the Envision framework, equivalent to a silver level of performance. The Envision boundary for the project will include all physical elements designed and constructed as part of this and follow the site boundary. However, some credits require stakeholder engagement and leadership activities, which were completed as part of the project design for the Metrolinx Barrie Line project and Orbit Master Plan. Throughout the incorporation of sustainable design and construction strategies, materials, methods, procedures, and practices, the Innisfil Go Station development will connect the community with the environment while considering enhanced conservation and protection measures, providing a welcoming, accessible, resilient, and high-performing demonstration of Metrolinx's sustainability leadership. So Lisa mentioned a few different metrics that, that would apply to the project. So we looked at Envision. Now we're looking at the DSO5, and specifically one of the requirements that was laid out in the DSO5, which is the life cycle analysis. And so as part of the, LCA that was done for the Innisfil Go Station, a number of embodied carbon reduction strategies were evaluated. One of them would be on-site concrete production. So concrete accounts for nearly 26% of embodied carbon, emphasizing the need for optimized material use to reduce emissions. The next would be use of GUL, that's general use limestone cement. So substituting GU cement with GUL cement reduces the global warming potential, GWP, by 1.6% by lowering the clinker content. Next would be to increase the SCM in foundations. SCM is supplementary cementing materials. So by raising the SCM content in foundations from 15% to 35% slag, this would cut the GWP by 1.3% and replacing some Portland cement. The next would be the use of new core rebar, where we are employing rebar with 98% recycled content, like new core. And this would reduce the GWP by 0.1%, leveraging energy efficient recycling. The next would be the substitution of non-galvanized steel, where we are opting for a lower carbon steel alternative instead of non-galvanized steel. And this would cut the GWP by 5.7%. Lastly, we would also increase the SCM in slab on grade, which would from 15% to 25% slag, which would lower the GWP by 0.8%, reducing cement reliance. Another key requirement that came out of the DSO5 was the climate risk vulnerability assessment, which explored the climate hazards. So the table 8 that you see here is the DSO5 Metrolinx climate parameters list. And these are sort of the probabilities that are expected to impact the Go Station over the next 35 years. So risks and associated impacts were ranked based on likelihood, frequency, and severity, with medium and high risks and impacts selected for mitigation through design and operational resiliency measures. So the preliminary Innisfil Go Station CRVA summary details the approach, methodology, data, risk rankings, outcomes, and resilience recommendations of the study. And lastly, as a requirement of SB10, an energy analysis needed to be done. And like Lisa mentioned, transit stations are a combination of mostly unconditioned spaces, but there are a few conditioned spaces. So the only sort of conditioned space or the only conditioned building within our Innisfil Go Station was the station building. So the energy modeling was done primarily for the station building. And this station building, right, in adherence to Metrolinx standards, needed to provide adequate sightlines to key facilities in the station. And so this included a lot of glazing. Nearly 40% of the building facade was glazing. So it was quite challenging, but also very interesting for us. We had to find the right balance between aesthetics, functionality, and energy use. And so, the report, the SB10 report that we did shows that the current proposed design of the Innisfil GO station is 19.3% better in energy savings and 37.1% better in greenhouse gas savings than the SB10 reference model. And we did this by the use of high performance air source heat pumps and backup high efficiency boilers, low wattage light fixtures, use of green roofs wherever possible, and demand control ventilation. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the presentation. I apologize for running over. There was just so much we wanted to share about our project with you. We are very proud of what we've designed, and we can't wait for construction to begin. Thank you. I'll now pass it back to Claire.
Thank you, Varsha, and thank you, Lisa, so much. Just a reminder, we do have about 8 minutes left for if there's any questions coming in. I don't know if Ashley had already prepared a question. I had a question she wanted to make. I'll just give a minute for anybody who wants to ask. Yeah, it was really thorough, a lot of information to absorb for the audience, but I see everybody's stayed on till the end, which is always a good sign. Hey, Ashley.
I had a quick question about accessibility because you brought that up extensively when talking about particularly those who may need to access the track and then getting on and off the train. I recall taking the GO for quite some years, and that the operator would extend a ramp out to those who needed to get on a train. Is that still the same process, or is what you all incorporated here going to eliminate the need for that additional ramp, or that ramp still has to come out in order for someone who's on a, let's say, a wheelchair or a scooter or any type of mobility device, they still need the ramp to get on safely onto the train?
So that's what those mini platforms are called. They're literally a mini platform that is at the height of the train. The intent is that when there's future electrification, this is built to space-proof for future electrification. So there's still a mini platform. It'll all get built up. So there's very specific trains that are accessible, but that's at a level area. So you'll come in from wherever you're dropped off and go in onto the mini platform and onto the train, and up an elevator if you need to go the other way. So no ramps. That solves it.
Thanks. Yeah, that looks great. Thank you for answering the question.
Great. It looks like I don't see any questions coming in, so we're just about time. I just got a couple of closing remarks. Again, thank you so much, Varsha and Lisa, for coming and speaking to us about this and sharing all of the work that you've done. Obviously, a huge project. Just a reminder for those of you on the call, there is a webinar next week on July 10th. Sorry, the week after next. Next week is Canada Day, so we took a bit of a break. On July 10th, we are back with a webinar entitled Inclusive Design for a Neurodiverse Workplace. So really interesting topic. Again, as I noted at the beginning of the presentation, we will report your hours on the transcript, provided you will here for 80% of the presentation. Just have a little patience with us as we upload those hours. And again, thank you so much for your attendance today, and have a wonderful remainder of your week, and happy Canada Day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.